Morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hey, my colleague Jessica.
Let's give it
Good morning.
a couple of minutes. Good morning. Let's give it a couple of minutes. I know that there was a meeting before this that might be going a little bit longer, so let's just give it a couple of minutes.
Oh, I was muted. Hello, everybody. That's already very crowded here in the Zoom call. That's great.
Hey,
Good morning. Good morning. It's a good day.
Good morning.
Okay. I'm a little bit late today, so let me just ping all the channels that the TSC call starts, and then I will start with the introduction. The
I can take care of
Hiero
that if you want.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you. So the Hiero community management call took a little bit longer. Um, that's why I'm a little bit delayed. Okay. So, welcome to the Hiero TSC call. Like every call we do at the Hiero project, this is a public call, which means that everybody is invited to join us in those calls and to discuss topics with us, bring in new topics, and so on. You can find all the calls, the public calls we are doing in the Hiero project in our public calendar, which is linked in the agenda of this call, on our webpage, in our GitHub, and so on. Let me just here in the chat share the link with you, and there you can find an overview of the different calls we are doing. As said, the Hiero community management, where I was like 3 minutes ago in, run a little bit longer. That's why I was late. We have for different topics calls, like for different communities, like the SDK community, After this TSC call, there will be a call about marketing in Hiero and so on. And if you miss a call, you can always go to previous appointments in the calendar, like last week TSC call, and then you will find a recording and minutes, AI-generated minutes of that call, um, so that even if you miss something, you can easily keep up with everything that has been discussed. And when we're discuss topics, as said, I would like to hear your voice, that you join our discussions, bring in questions, concerns, whatever. Um, since we want to be as open as possible, we need some light rules for that. And in all our meetings, those rules are the code of conduct of the Linux Foundation and the antitrust policy of the Linux Foundation, which in general means please be friendly to each other, and then we can have great conversations, discussions, meetings, and so on. Which brings us to the agenda of the today's TSC meeting. And like in every meeting, I start with a short "what happened last week" introduction. And last week in the TSC call, we talked a lot about documentation. There was a proposal for the solo docs repo, which will be a repo that contains, first of all, now the documentation of the solo repo, but since solo will be split up in future in multiple repositories, like having the solo CLI and other solo repositories, the whole documentation will then be consolidated into one repo, which is the solo docs repo. And next to that, Jessica gave an introduction of the LF mentorship, where this year we would like to be part of for the first time, which means that we want to propose projects based on something within Hiero to LFDT, so that hopefully mentees can work on those projects, even get paid for that work by the LF. And we, as the maintainers and committers of the project, will mentor those people, like those newcomers, which I assume is a very great win-win situation. We get some interesting work done. We get some interesting point of views from, newcomers, from people who are not heavily involved into the daily business we do. And on the other hand, they will learn a lot and in best case stay as part of our community. That was more or less what we've discussed last time, which brings me to the next topic of the list, which is updates from the community on any interesting events, on any interesting things that happens in the future that you would like to share or bring into the Hiero community. Jessica, I assume it was Jessica, already added the mentorship meetup event here. So Jessica, maybe you want to say something about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I also added in the chat, and I just noticed that later on in the agenda, there's a little bit of more reference of the mentorship topics that we are developing for the application. The application deadline, I believe, is the 13th of March. So we will have one more meeting to go over reviewing our application ideas on the 9th. So if you're interested in participating, I will really recommend you to attend the meeting, the mentorship meeting that we have internally on the 9th. But this meetup event that Hendrik is explaining right now, it's a panel that features several mentors and mentees from past mentorship programs. And this is going to be a great opportunity for people who are not familiar with the mentorship program to get an idea on how it impacts the community, how the mentorship has helped their community, or how it has brought the efforts to bring in new talent into the project. So I will definitely recommend you to attend this meeting. This meeting is on Thursday, the 5th, and it runs from 5 to 6 p.m. So if you have the chance to attend this event, please register. And yeah, let us know what you think about the mentorship program and come back to March 9th to our session on mentorship program. So we definitely want to see you there. Thank you.
Perfect. And if you can't wait until those dates, since yesterday, the recordings that Jessica and I did on the LFDT maintainer days in New York are now at YouTube. And there was one recording about the LFDT mentorship program. Let me just share it here in the chat with everybody who's interested. And another video you should watch for sure is this video where Sophie gives an introduction on good first issues and new contributors to the Hiero project, next to a lot of other interesting videos from the maintainer days. I think with those two links, if you are interested in it, you will find the other videos. With that, are there any other updates, events, somebody of you wants to share with the community?
Yeah, I just wanted to give an update on a project that was proposed a few months ago. We have the cryptography repo that's used for the consensus node and bringing TSS, which was approved earlier. So the plan is to move that from the Hedera repo over to the Hiero repo. And I just wanted to give an update after months of waiting and cleaning that repo and getting legal approval. It should be ready to move in the next few weeks. So
Good.
Jessica, I don't know if I need to coordinate with you or give you a heads up, but Andrew Brandt from our side will be starting that likely next week.
Sounds good. Yeah. I'll connect with him too so that we can do this together. But yeah, it's
Okay.
great to hear. It's great to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your patience. Yep, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. Cool. Any other topics? Okay. So I already gave a reminder about our public community calls. Always do that at the beginning. What I have not said is, hey, we have a Discord, and a lot is happening in that Discord, especially for if you be a committer or maintainer on one of our projects, you should be part of the Discord because more and more discussions happening within that Discord. So before we come to our guest today and the presentation, I would like to come back to the Linux Foundation mentorship program that Jessica and I already talked about. But as Jessica said, we want to be part of it with Hiero, and to do so, we currently have our Hiero mentorship meetups. That is exactly about creating project proposals for the for the Linux Foundation mentorship program. And last week we had a short look at the different ideas that we have. And the update for this week is that if I click here and go to the Hiero Ledger Hiero org, We now have within our Hiero org a mentorship program 2026 folder, and we have our first project proposal being created here. And I know that at least 2 others will come over the next days. So I hope that next week we can have a look at 3 proposals that we want to bring forward to the tech of LFDT that hopefully then will become part of the Linux Foundation mentorship program. If you have any good ideas or are willing to be a mentor on that program, it's not too late. Just ping me or ping Jessica or ping Sophie, and we will help you to drive that forward, share all information with you, and so on. So please come to us if you have any ideas in mind or would like to help here. Okay, any questions on that? Awesome. Okay, so as said, we have a guest here today, which is Hart Montgomery from the Linux Foundation, who gave at the LFDT Member Summit a very interesting presentation about the future of digital trust, and with that, the future of LFDT. And when I saw it, I was thinking, oh yeah, that is really a good presentation that should be shared with the Hiero community. And with that, I invited him to our TSC meeting to bring that presentation to the Hiero community here in that TSC meeting. And with that, I will mute myself. Hi, Hart, and the stage is yours. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will share my screen and start talking. I'd like this to be very casual, so, please feel free to interrupt, ask questions, whatever you like. This is about predicting the future, so it's not the easiest, but let's get started. So as you all know, today and in the past, LF Decentralized Trust and formerly Hyperledger have been a collection of decentralized technologies, right? Heavily focused on sort of blockchain, digital identity, interoperability. But recently we've seen maintainers and contributors branch out into things like privacy with Paladin, cryptographic tools and key management like Lockness, and ZK tools and things like Minakawa. So we just wanted to sort of take a look and talk about, sort of where we think things are going. As we've seen in 2025, we've really seen the growth of decentralized identity. We've seen more open source smart contracts and cryptographic tools and protocols. I think 2026 is going to be a big year where we start to see a lot of open source standardized smart contracts, and I'll go into that more later. But as we continue, right, as things move forward, we're expecting to see a lot more digital public infrastructure. Are people here familiar with EBSI? Yes, no, maybe? Feel free to speak up.
Yeah, I work with that in the past. I'm from
Awesome.
Italy,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's why.
Great, great. So, we have things like EBSI, LACChain, Elastria. So we're really starting to see growth in this area, not to mention things like the EU DI wallet infrastructure and lots of different US states doing digital identity as well. We're seeing big growth in privacy preserving computation. MPC is becoming very, very, it's growing a lot if you're familiar with that technology. And we're seeing a big push towards tokenization and digital asset infrastructure. So token standards, things like that. I don't know if you all listened to the open asset discussion, but it's likely we'll see token standards in LFDT very soon. And then finally, looking forward in the sort of longer term future, we believe that a lot of the way that ML is going to have to work is in a decentralized way, right? If Visa and MasterCard are working together to build a model for fraud, well, they probably don't trust each other with the other company's data. And it might not even be legally possible for them to share data. So we're going to probably have to see some kind of federated learning protocols become popular, things like that. And of course, there's the whole post-quantum cryptography and cryptographic agility angle as well. So, this is kind of a high-level thing. I'll keep going because I'm going to go into some of these in more detail. But if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Don't be shy. One thing we really see as a trend is code becoming sort of code plus standards. Now, the LF has historically been a code organization, but we've seen a lot of interest in people that want to build standards in the recent history. We see this for a number of reasons. Certainly, the trend towards AI is accelerating this. ML is bringing down the cost of creating new code, but we still need to sort of agree on the interfaces and APIs if we're all working together. And so this brings into play, a lot more standardization problems. As you all probably know, our biggest standards organization at LFDT is Trust over IP. When we took them in as part of the creation of LFDT, are most people here familiar with Trust over IP?
I am not.
All right, thanks for answering, Richard. So Trust over IP is a standards org, as they say, an architecture for internet digital trust. Trust over IP works in the form of working groups. So each of these groups works together and the output is typically some standard. Thanks for the kind words on TOIP, Michael. So I'll just put the working groups up here. This is, mostly what they're focused on right now. There's a lot of different stuff. I'm happy to take questions about these to the ability that I can answer them. Some of them I'm much more familiar with than others. But, everything from the utility foundry to trust spanning protocol, which is great for interoperability and discoverability, and then new stuff about AI and ML tools. So I'll just pause there and let everybody take a look. I don't need to read through all of these, but if you have any questions about any particular one, I'll do my best to answer it. And then, there's the question of what do we mean by open standards, right? We're open source software at the Linux Foundation. And if we move into open standards, what does this mean? Well, we want to do standards in a way that are, public specs developed through transparent and open and consensus-driven processes. This sounds like it might be obvious, but a lot of the existing standards orgs today are not completely open and transparent. They're not completely, they're not open. You can't participate. Goes, for everything from ISO, which is kind of the most closed standards org. Certainly more modern ones like the IETF and W3C are more open. But essentially here we want to apply our our code development principles to open standards. I would say a critical thing is that we want our standards orgs to be lightweight. Um, we are really happy with the scenario where someone incubates a standard in LFDT or the Linux Foundation and then moves it later to a more formal standards body once it's been baked in. This is a very common use of LF standards these days. We think this is critical in very fast moving areas, many of which LFDT operates in, because the traditional standards orgs don't necessarily allow you to move quickly enough. They're slow and deliberate, which is great for some things, but if you're in an area where the technology is moving really fast and you need to have something, we need something a little faster. Why are open standards important? I'm not sure I really need to preach to this crowd why open standards are important. I think you all understand this already. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. I think the key point is we need resilience and portability, even in rapidly evolving technical landscapes. Things like digital identity, tokenization, all of these things are changing extremely quickly. Digital identity is a especially interesting case because the technology used, which is typically zero knowledge proof based, is changing extremely quickly. And it's very, very hard to keep up with that with a traditional standards org. By the time the technology is already standardized, it's already out of date. So this is important, particularly in this context. So again, we develop standards through a consensus-driven process. The one thing that you all will probably find different is in many cases we have IP and patent protection agreements for some of our standards bodies, like Trust over IP in particular. If you want to participate, it's open to anyone, but you need to sign a contributor agreement saying that sort of any IP that you generate as part of the group process is it belongs to the group kind of thing. But that's the main difference that you would notice if, as a code contributor, you wanted to join a standards body. Again, we see lots of benefits. Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, for the IP thing, if a repo under Hiero, for example, wanted to utilize that, is that like a GitHub action or something that you guys have set up that we
Yeah, we
can?
can set this up for you if you want. That is sort of the more heavyweight standards option. It's called a JDF charter, a Joint Development Foundation. We also have a CSL charter, which is a little bit more lightweight. If you're interested in having a standards project, we can go over or a standards sub project, we can go over all of this with you about the trade-offs. We usually prefer a more lightweight option, except in sort of two cases. One, where there's an area that's sort of an IP minefield, or two, you're creating a standards project or sub-project with a specific formal standards goal. Like, say you want to, for some reason, you want to create an ISO standard, then it can be helpful to have all of the paperwork in place from the beginning, and we can help with that as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Alex.
Yeah, I was just going back in the IP contributions there, that not only the developer is providing it, but generally in such situations, you're providing or disclosing any intellectual property that's already
Yes,
been under protection and contributing that under the terms of the project.
that's exactly right. Yeah. there were a bunch of cases in the 90s where less than honest orgs sort of secretly embedded their IP in standards, causing major problems for a lot of people. Um, and all of these rules are designed to mitigate this kind of thing happening. So yeah, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing it up. Any other questions? Happy to answer questions. If not, I will continue.
There is a hands up.
Oh, sorry, Keith.
I I find it interesting. So sorry, my name's Keith. I worked in the identity space for a long time, and I've watched TOIP since its inception. To me, it's not been a successful standards organization in that it's typically been a very insular, small group of people working on those standards. Like maybe, like I think now some of the working groups are like two or three people. Those standards have not really seen adoption because like there's no one. And maybe my larger point is because I think part of the problem with TOIP is like there's been no larger companies participating in those standards, not even medium-sized companies participating in those standards. So like there's been maybe other than some of the edge work around DIDCOM, there's been very little adoption. So my larger point is like standards is not just a bunch of individuals getting together and coming up with the standards. Standards, successful standards is a lot more than that. So I wonder maybe if speaking like a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the success of TOIP is highly non-uniform based on the topic. Some of the standards have been very successful and some have not been successful. I think DITCOM has been successful. I think, Carry has gotten a lot of adoption and is getting more adoption. Um, so I think it really depends. Uh, but again, we see this with code projects as well. Some of them become very successful and some of them don't. And you're absolutely right that, and I think this goes for just the broader digital identity community as well, is that we haven't seen a ton of adoption by big companies sort of yet of really anything in terms of decentralized identity. Now, Google is really, starting to change this. I'm sure you've seen the Longfellow code and the push they're doing around that. Um, so, I guess I'm optimistic that we'll see a lot of digital identity adoption in the near future, particularly around the EUDI wallet and some of the state work that's happening in the US. Um, and I just see the lack of adoption of standards in this space as just the lack of adoption of anything in decentralized identity.
Well, if I could just try to emphasize my point. I mean, I think you criticized ISO. I mean, fair enough. Lots of people don't like ISO, but MDL has been a very successful standard, being widely adopted across the US, and it is supported by the big tech companies like Google. Like, more importantly, like they had all the key stakeholders in those standards conversations, like the driver's license bureaus, big tech companies, like IDEMIA, all these guys who make the driver's licenses. So like it was a successful standard. Also, like another example would be like I worked a lot with FIDO. I mean, you go to a FIDO standards meeting where on passkeys, like all the big players are in the room, like Apple, Google, Amazon. So it's just to say like standards, again, just back to my point, is a lot of standards, especially within tech, is about that the some of the key tech players are in the room. So I just, that's something to consider when you're thinking about the standards effort is like how do you draw the big players and maybe in the Web3 space like Circle or some of the to the standards conversation because I think they're important.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely important. I would, I would definitely say watch the watch the LFTT space for new standards efforts in tokenization. Um, I well, what can I say? Uh, I think there will be a bunch of big and interesting players coming soon. Awesome. All right. So this is what I was getting at about the licensing and the standards project orgs. The heavyweight standard option is the JDF. The JDF is the sort of stricter organization. If you do want to advance through something like ISO or and even the IETF, we can put together a JDF template that makes it very easy to happen. CSL is more lightweight and makes participation easier because everyone doesn't have to have a contributor agreement in place before they participate. So I'll come back to standards in a minute, but at LFTT, a lot of the innovation happens in labs, and so I just want to highlight that. Just some numbers on the labs. We have a huge amount of labs. Most of them are not very big or very active, but some of them are. A couple of things I want to highlight, though. So OpenVTC and ZKBK. So these are libraries and tools for building proofs of personhood. I know there was a Hedera demo for this recently. I'm sure some of you are involved in this. I would check out OpenVTC, which is a very recent lab contribution. It got in last week, but it's a full protocol for proof of personhood based on DIDs. It's under active development. It's not privacy feature complete yet, but it's got a full CLI toolkit and the full DID infrastructure works, and you can play around with it. I'll go into that a little bit more later, but it's fun to play with. Another effort that I really like is a standardization project that was started recently on generic ZK snarks. This was created by some folks at the EF, and the idea is that snark technology is changing rapidly, but the general interfaces to arithmetic snarks are remaining relatively constant. And the idea is that we can standardize some of these components of snarks so that when a new snark system comes around, it's much, much easier to update code to use the new technology. Then finally, there's a big open source initiative just getting started called Nightstream, and it's about developing a PQ ZKP system. So transparent snarks, if you're familiar with those, so no trusted setups, and lattice-based. That is very new and doesn't have a lot of work on it yet, but I'm excited about that one. So just some synergy, right? When we talk about code and code plus standards, who here is familiar with the XC utils attack? Hopefully most people.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. So I won't go into this, but how would we solve this problem? Well, one way we could do this is using sort of digital credentials, right? They're using a modified system, right? So here we have Linus signing a statement saying, I know Greg is a developer and I've met him in person. And I have passports here because we're going to represent binding them to some kind of government identity through a zero knowledge proof, right? And then we can build up a whole maintainer web of trust, right? So the kernel maintainers thought this was funny that we represented them as some interesting characters, but if we wanted to stop these kind of like rogue attacks, we could have this this web of trust. Everyone's tied to a government identity, and you're vouched. Well, it doesn't have to be a government identity, but in many cases it could be. And any identity would be in zero knowledge, of course. But we can build up this web of trust to make sure that our maintainers are trusted, So we avoid these kinds of XC attacks. Um, and so if we go back on the far right, we have, the rock. And the rock says, I want to prove that I have two social paths of, at most like 5 Tolenus, right? We don't want to reveal the paths, right? We want to be as privacy preserving as possible, because otherwise we may open up the kernel to social engineering attacks, right? So what can we do, right? Well, this is where we can use sort of modern cryptography and zero knowledge proofs. We can put together these proof chains that sort of look like the following, right? So Dwight says, I know that Rock is a developer, and he signs that, and then he proves he has an appropriate path, right? And then Katy Perry does the same thing, right? And then the Rock can use this to generate, another zero knowledge proof saying that he also satisfies the policy. So this is a very high level, and I have a much longer talk about this. We don't have time for that today. I'll say, we can't do this with traditional anonymous credentials, and we need some code and standards to make this work, right? So at TOIP, there's the new decentralized trust graph working group, which is working on this, trying to standardize these sort of reputation proofs, if you will. We're calling them proofs of personhood. And then we have new implementations in LFDT labs, particularly OpenVTC is a direct implementation of this. So yeah, just looking ahead, this is the kind of thing we will see. I know I didn't talk about PQ crypto at all, but I'm happy to talk about that if you all like, and anything else. And that's my presentation. Can I answer any questions?
Hey, Hart, I have a question. I think at the beginning when you showed this timeline graph, you talked about ML and how that comes together with ML and in many places, right? Regarding proof of ML learning, maybe regarding payment, maybe regarding digital identity. So there are a lot of topics. And
Yeah,
within LF, there are now like sub-foundations like the Agentic AI Foundation and others that take care on those topics. So what is the idea of LF or LFDT to not have those parts work without decentralized trust, decentralized ledgers, did and so on in mind? So is there like the idea of do some collaboration? Are there concrete ideas? Yeah, that is my question.
absolutely. So we've been talking with sort of all of the folks working on this. For instance, there's an AAIF working group on identity and trust. Last week at the LF Executive Forum, Daniela and I led the discussion on identity and trust for agents. These things are all just getting formed over there. So we're looking at potential avenues for collaboration.
I'm part of the working group. Just for you, that is why I know about it, and that's where my
Yeah.
question comes from.
The main issue right now that we're having is in an unusual move for the Linux Foundation. The AAIF has opened their working groups to only members, which makes it hard from folks in other communities to participate. So we're really waiting on them to open up or find some way for all of our contributors to participate. So that's the big bottleneck with the AAIF. We anticipate that will get solved, that foundation has obviously grown a lot, but there's going to be a lot of change, right? Jim Zemlin is not going to be the executive director of that foundation forever. Uh, so, quite frankly, we're ahead of what they've been doing in that working group. Um, but that's certainly on our radar for collaboration
Cool.
once they get things figured out and we can open up.
Thank you.
And I have a question about the web of trust that you shown. So while I'm a great lover about PGP and all these web of trust approaches, I
Uh-huh.
still find that after years and years, the adoption is still quite low. So I don't know if is there some initiative to help spreading the standards across commonly used tools or applications, so this can be in some way injected into the kind of normal life of people, because at the moment, yeah, it's
Yeah, so that's a great point. So the kernel team, the Linux kernel team does currently have a PGP Web of Trust, right?
Mhm.
Um, our goal is to build, and what we believe we're doing is to build a better, more usable uh, system using sort of modern cryptography. Um,
But
we've
is it is going to solve the, I would say, the technical issues, but isn't going to solve, to me, the UI issue or the spreading of this
so
technology?
we hope it will make the UI issue much easier. Yes.
Mm.
So that's our goal. And I can show you that there's an app for this already. I don't know how well this will render, but last week we sort of demoed, or well, there was a demo on this H to H connection app. So you can see I'm showing the phone on the screen. You can see my
Mhm.
connections. Um, this is entirely DID based. Um, you can see where I've built up verifiable relationship credentials. Um, so, it can look very nice, right? You can see, uh, this represents my, um, an attestation via a DID for Mike Purcell, who's the head of the Confidential Compute Consortium at the LF. Um, so, we think there will be a very nice UI, and we think we can build it. Um,
Okay.
in the
And
dream world, everything will be integrated with GitHub, but
Mhm.
that's a ways out.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because probably, yeah, we need to think something about that can be integrated into, I don't know, commonly used
Hmm.
messaging systems, or I don't know, something that can be used again by people that don't are they maybe they are less sensitive about these kind of topics, because you and me, okay, we are passionate about these kind of topics, but yeah, I think even big companies don't have this kind of security. They should, but yeah, it's but
Yeah,
yeah, happy to see that we are investing also in this
yeah,
direction.
sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
No, no, I'm done. So big thing.
Yeah, we definitely are aware of the UI issues, uh, and um, we're looking at that. And as far as integration goes, we've already been speaking with the with people at places like LFX about this. So,
Yeah. Thanks.
any more questions? I'm happy to stop and take questions offline if there are other agenda items you want to cover in the meeting as well. I saw a comment on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Hart, for the presentation and answering all those questions. Um, Good. So, yeah, if you have any further questions, please ask Haas, or if you don't know how to contact him, you will find him on Discord, or you can contact me and I will create contact between you and Hart if you have any additional questions. Happy to help here. And he's just shared his mail address in the chat. So we have 10 minutes left. Thanks for the reminder, Joseph. And the next agenda item on our list are the hips. And I know that after we had no hips for some weeks, we now have a hip that is ready for presentation. And I see Mark is here. Will you present it? Will somebody else present it? Can you maybe give an update?
Yeah. So Joseph I could present it, but Joseph's probably a little better at it. It's HIP 1398, the TSS ceremony HIP.
Here we go.
But Joseph, let me know. Is Joseph still on?
Joseph is
I'm
in the
here.
call.
I was
Yes.
muted twice.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thanks, bud.
So I think the best is, Joseph, do you want to share something, or should I just share this tip like
better
that?
if you do. I don't have it up at the moment.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So just tell me when I need to scroll somewhere.
Okay, so this is a little tricky. It's hard to do in 5 minutes. With release 72, we will be deploying temporarily a piece of software that runs a powers of tau ceremony. This is a standard cryptographic protocol that generates a set of data files, very large data files, that are then used in both creating recursive proofs and compressing those recursive proofs so that they don't consume massive amounts of data space. The ceremony needs to be run one time. All inputs and outputs are public, and the results are public and can be used across all Hiero networks. So once we've completed this ceremony, all Hiero networks will have the data they need to enable TSS. The primary output is the proving key for RAPS, which is an acronym for Weighted Roster Attestation Proof System. And it is used to prove the validity and authenticity of a hints verification key and address book. So in the TSS system, you start with your Genesis address book, which is what determines your ledger ID. And then for every time the address book changes, which by default is every day, a proof is generated, a zero knowledge proof is generated that the new address book was approved by all the members of the previous address book. And then the new address book also generates a key that it will use for signing blocks for that day. So the RAPS proof is what provides that authenticity of that chain of trust from one address book to the next, and allows you to use a single set of verifying data to verify all blocks, starting from Genesis through forever. Anyway, so this ceremony needs to be run. It needs to be run one time. So what we're planning to do here is deploy the piece of software, completely independent piece of software that orchestrates that ceremony so that the consensus nodes are the entities that participate in creating that data. And then that data, once created, is stored in a publicly accessible read-only archive, probably some sort of cloud bucket, probably multiple places. It will be backed up in many places to ensure that it can't be lost, and then distributed to all of the consensus nodes as part of the build for the next release. At which point the consensus network will be able to begin processing TSS data. We won't sign blocks quite yet at that point, but we'll be able to begin signing blocks after that. Any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to raise my hand there, but Michael's up first.
Michael?
Just wondering if there are any risks with this process that we should be aware of.
The ceremony itself is a well-known process. The software has been very thoroughly tested, and we are going to continue running additional testing in environments such as staging to ensure that there is absolutely no risk to the consensus node software. We're also, when we run it, we will run it in an isolated container to ensure that it doesn't accidentally interfere. Alex?
Yeah, I just wanted a kind of a clarification around the historical, like I said, going back to Genesis. Now, are you referring to open access Genesis because we had the streaming restart before then, or where's the starting point that
Right.
you're referring to?
So for new Hiero networks, it'll be the actual Genesis address book. There's a separate process that we have to do, be a little more nuanced with the Hedera network because Hedera has open access and the long history between open access and when cutover actually happens. That's a separate hip. But yes, that will, the TSS signatures in the case of the Hedera mainnet and probably testnet as well will apply to the address book at cutover as the Genesis address, as the so-called Genesis address book, not
And
the
the
actual
cutover you were talking
Genesis.
for is like what, September 13th of 2019?
It's no. Cutover is June of this year. It's when we switch from
Okay.
it's HIP 1193. It's when we switch from records to block
Block
streams
streams.
and from RSA signing to TSS signing. So when we actually begin signing the network with TSS, there's an address book which will represent the start of TSS, and that's the so-called Genesis address book for TSS purposes.
Okay, so anything prior to that time will remain as is.
Correct. All
So,
records will remain RSA signed only. They will never be signed by TSS. And that's not entirely true because we intend to create state-proof based proofs for all record blocks in history, but that's a separate project and will be done offline basically.
yeah, so the implications for say a brand new mirror node would be it would have to understand that there's a distinction in the consumption and validation of the data.
Yes, and the mirror node has already been upgraded to handle that distinction. And that's only for a time. There will come a point at which we won't need that to record that distinction anymore. You'll be able to prove all blocks in history from via TSS. That's just going to take several months after cutover because we need the first cutover signature in order to generate the state proofs.
Okay. Great, thank you.
So Hendrik, we just wanted to introduce this HIP to the TSC today and was hoping to have a vote next week.
Yeah.
Of course, happy to answer any questions or walk through it again with anybody.
Yeah.
But just wanted to introduce it today. Yep.
Makes totally sense. Happy to share the link again of the HIP with the question of not only the TSC, everybody who's interested to have a look at it and see if any question comes up. And if not, or we can answer all questions next week. We will do a TSC voting on that next week. Yes, perfect. Good. And with that, we're already at the end of time. We had some points under any other business. Jessica, I will move them as the first agenda points for next week, okay? Perfect. Good. Then thank you again for being part of the TSC meeting, and see you all next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.